folks, this is some really good news. New Warriors, welcome back. Path of Exile 2, upcoming plans for patch 0.2.1. Let's get started. This is crazy stuff. We're seeing some endgame rewards, new uniques coming in, and much more. So let's jump right into it. So as we already know, endgame rewards have been somewhat lacking, and now the folks over at GGG are going to pump it up to the next level. So when setting up the frequency of encounters and rewards for Path of Exile 2, we have to decide how many maps players will have to do in order to get them. After extensive playtesting, we now believe that we overshot this number pretty substantially. In 0.2.0G, we improved the baseline experience of getting rewards from monsters and chests, but we still feel you don't get enough of those exciting spike moments when something very powerful or valuable drops. There actually are some very cool items to find, but you won't ever find them because they're incredibly rare. One of the major focuses of 0.2.1 is making chase items more common, but also adding more chase items to find. This right here is great. I'm glad that they recognized that there was somewhat of a lack of incentive with regards to the end game and players wanting to dive deeper to gather more of those rare items, those uniques. And this kind of follows into unique items. So in 0.2.1, we're going to be significantly improving both the drop rates of the incredibly rare unique items we already have, as well as adding a bunch of new and exciting chase uniques that will take your builds to new heights. This is truly great. We're also buffing some of the rare uniques that were intended to be chase, but didn't live up to that standard. You should see significantly more chase uniques than before, and we'll be doing a post showing of some of the new uniques next week. I am very pumped for this. Super pumped for this. I cannot wait to see what the new uniques are. Dude, grinding gear, y'all keep cooking. Keep it up. You're doing great. Next, we have crafting socketables. Now, this I definitely will agree with regards to adding more volume and more variety. So one of the issues that we have with the socketable crafting system at the moment is that by the time you get to the end game, there isn't really anything new or exciting to find to socket in your gear. Resist and attributes are great to help with solving problems in the early game, but in the end game, ideally you should be swapping all of these out for more interesting and powerful mods, which is very true. There are a lot of times where I've hoarded so much socketables and they don't really feel as impactful come late game. So for them to recognize this is great. So it says in 0.2.1, we are adding 22 new runes, 14 new soul cores, and 7 new talismans. These cover a full spectrum from being powerful to insane, but are rare to find. You'll certainly want to use them over the normal base set of socketables. Fantastic. This is awesome. Once again, more incentive, more reason for you to want to get into the end game, dive deeper. This is just all great news so far. Next, we have Ritual. Ritual also suffered from us pitching the chase rewards too rare as well. We're making the rare omens from Ritual more common. You'll see the same number of omens, but they have a significantly higher probability of being the rarer, more exciting ones. Okay. I mean, this is a pretty respectable change. I think this is good. You know, you having a significantly higher probability of receiving these receiving items from the rituals is always good. It's always nice. Corrupted essences, while we're at it, will also be increasing the commonality of getting corrupted essences when using Val orbs on monsters trapped in essences by approximately 6 times. This sounds good on paper, but we'll have to see what happens in game. But from the looks of it, it does sound pretty substantial. We'll see. Rogue Exiles. Now this, for me personally, I think needs to be fixed just because I haven't really seen as much variance. And when I do, it's not as impactful, not as satisfying. But let's see. Rogue Exiles just didn't have enough unique items, so we are increasing the frequency that Rogue Exiles have and thus drop unique items by approximately 3 times. Yeah, this was, I think, one of the main gripes I had with fighting Rogue Exiles was that a lot of the time I would fight them only for them to drop rares, and those rares were pretty underwhelming. So for them to now increase the drop rate of uniques is really a welcome change. Twisted Domain. The boss in the Twisted Domain was pretty valuable, but as an endgame area, the rest of it was pretty underwhelming compared to the other content you were doing at the time. Technical content shouldn't be giving less rewards than the dozens of maps required to gain access to it. Facts. To start with, we have substantially increased the number of rare monsters that spawn during the domain. Previously, there would often be no rare monsters at all. In addition, we have changed the balance of quantity and rarity that monsters in the domain have. This will mean that the large drop of items that occurs right before the boss fight should now be way more valuable than before. We now also guarantee some rare breach rings in the resulting drop, so you should come away with at least a decent chance of some powerful items. Once again, a good change. The lack of breach rings from before was not the greatest, but now that they're out there planning to guarantee some breach rings is all really, really good. A welcome change again. And then we have expedition logbooks. Okay, this is a pretty beefy section, so we'll try and skim through it, but we'll look at the more important parts. So one thing that makes logbooks unrewarding is the fact that at very high levels, they have so few monsters spawning that they often end up yielding significantly less items than just a regular endgame map. This is reflected in the fact that at low level 90s, you can do an entire level 80, the highest possible level, logbook, and not even gain 1% of a level of experience, which was really, really hurting. I've seen so many streamers who have just struggled in this part of the game, like the very, very end of the game, and their just experience is just a grind. It comes to a halt almost at times. So what are they doing? We're doing a pass on the amount of monsters spawning to intensify the combat, but focusing on very high level ones to better match the consistency of other endgame content. The first change is that we're increasing the distance between explosives and the radius of explosives. This will allow you to ultimately uncover more monsters and rewards. On top of this, we're also increasing the number of monsters spawned to be more reflective of what an endgame map has in it. That's cool. More challenge, the better. I think it just makes it so that when you jump into endgame, you feel like you're tested, as opposed to you can just kind of blast your way through. Now this feels a lot more challenging, which is great. Additionally, we're also making changes to the specific features found in each of the different logbook areas. The Lush Isle area currently has Karui totem remnants that cause the monsters to give substantially increased experience. It also has fenced off areas where you can explode the fence and gain access to totems that drop a lot of currency items, and on the beaches there are small corruption pustules that drop uncut skill gems. Okay. In order to improve this area, we are increasing the number of remnants, especially the experienced ones. Additionally, we will generate more of the fenced off sections, and a larger change to the pustules will be made where destroying any of them will cause all monsters unearthed afterwards to spawn corruption monsters on death, similar to those in the corrupted areas on the Atlas. Alright, combined with the base changes to drastically increase the number of base monsters spawned during logbooks, it is intended that Lush Isle provides a very good source of experience. Yeah, I've seen streamers have somewhat of a gripe with regards to this. So I'm glad that they're actually taking the initiative to make some really, really good changes there. Okay, so we'll come back to this part here. I want to look at the endgame content and variety improvements, as well as the Trial of Sekemas, because I think these two really speak to a lot of players, especially Trial of Sekemas. So let's start off with the endgame content here. So a second main focus is that we're going to increase the variety of running endgame maps. Right now, did you know that if you were to generate 400,000 maps, that 150,000 of them would be hidden grotto? We are certainly sick of running that area and fighting that same boss on repeat. Yes, not the greatest. Okay, so the intention here is to normalize the frequency that different maps and thus boss fights appear on the Atlas. This will make things feel far less repetitive when playing the endgame, especially for many, many hours. Yeah, it's good to have variance, and this is really, really a good point that they brought up here. A lot of times during the endgame, it feels like you are just kind of running through a replay. So giving us more variance now is going to ensure that our gameplay and the time we invest is more satisfying. Now, Citadel spawning has been adjusted. Now, whenever a Citadel is generated on the Atlas, it also ensures that it generates the other two types of Citadels near it. This will prevent cases where we have been seeing where players would, due to the whims of random generation, get many of the same Citadel one after another and never be able to fight the Arbiter of Ash, especially when not in a trade league. I think this plays into the private leagues as well, or just like races. I know that people most recently in Darth microtransactions race to Arbiter. there are instances where people would just not get a citadel, so it kind of slowed down their pacing. So this is good, you know, giving us more probability is important. Both these changes to Atlas layouts won't apply to areas of the Atlas that you have already revealed. In order to get the improvements, you will need to explore further away into parts of the Atlas that haven't been generated yet. Additionally, you can expect some other endgame improvements, such as reducing the danger of 2 of the ritual types that were just a ruckus of purple chaos explosions. Yeah, this is super annoying. And reducing the danger and increasing the telegraphing of the volatile plants monster modifier. Combined, these were responsible for over half of all player deaths in the end game. Yes, this finally they're getting rid of all the purple blobs. Like, that stuff was a headache. So good on them for recognizing that and just kind of really reducing that. Then we're also lowering some of the more dangerous map modifiers like elemental penetration to be more in line with others, improving the rewards and visibility of omens in the Viridian Wildwood unique map, increasing the radius to open clasp hands and breaches, reducing the pack size of the bats that shotgun you with projectiles in a twisted domain, and reworking the curse map mods to have counterplay. These are just some of the more isolated improvements coming. Man, this sounds good. Overall, a win in my book. Making sure that players have fun while they're in the end game, I think, is imperative. You know, retention is important, so they recognize that they need to lower down some of the annoyance. So here we are with the Trials of Sakema. So in Trials of Sakema, we've adjusted the affliction that caused you to have no energy shield to instead half your energy shield. Okay. This is for chaos inoculation builds, so that when they randomly get this affliction, the run isn't effectively over. Okay, cool. Respectable change. On top of this, we discovered a mistake with the chances of getting certain afflictions and boons. Specifically, there was 1 affliction, 2 minor boons, 1 major boon, and 1 pact that had 100 times the commonality they should have. This would have caused players to constantly be getting them as the first randomly generated outcome, and as these boons were in particular the weaker and more boring ones, it often would have made the runs less rewarding and interesting. Once again, really good changes overall. Like, I'm really liking what they're doing so far, making sure that just the variance of what you're receiving as a player going into the end game is sufficient and maintains enough of a consistency to where players now feel they're getting rewarded for their efforts, as opposed to jumping in, leaving, and not feeling as if they put in enough work and being rewarded for it. So this is some quality of life stuff. So we did some notable quality of life improvements, okay, in 0.2.0h, but there are more coming. We have a huge improvement to searching on the passive tree when using keyboard and mouse. Now, when you search for passive by typing in the text field, you can press enter to automatically find and go to that passive. Cool. If there are multiple passives found in your search, then continuing to press enter will cycle through them. Ooh. That sounds really nice. Good ease of use right there. Love that. It also darkens the rest of the passive tree to help bring the search nodes into the foreground, making them much easier to see. Great change. I love this. This is really good. As someone who's constantly crafting new builds all the time, being able to search for passives on the nodes or in the skill tree quickly is so nice. It's so good. What a welcome change. Awesome. A huge request has been that we invert the display of tier X on items when using advanced item display. This is so that you can immediately identify if a modifier is the best it can be on an item. This is more for advanced and endgame players, but is very important to being able to quickly assess the true power of an item or if it's an appropriate crafting base. We are swapping this back to work the same way as Path of Exile 1. So this is good for PoE 1 fans, of course, and everyone in general. This is a huge win. This is really good. On the Atlas, when you hover a map, it will separate the categories of modifiers displayed, so you can more easily see where those modifiers are coming from. Specifically, you can now determine if they're from corrupted or cleansed influence in one category, and if they're from towers in another category. This will help make it clear when looking for specific modifiers like +1 level in corrupted influence areas. There is also performance improvement coming. We're optimizing the physics on monsters and NPCs across the game. This is making them significantly cheaper and will cause less CPU bottlenecks on performance. Great. because this has been somewhat of a stifling issue. You know, performance issues have been crippling for PoE 2 as of late, so it's good that they're working toward fixing that. This issue isn't prevalent everywhere, but is common in areas with lots of humans, such as the Faradun in Act 2 or in Thraethorn in Act 1. We'll continue to optimize these incrementally in every patch as we find all the suboptimal cases. We've also added some improvements to the shop and cosmetics panel, including an Equip Now button when purchasing microtransactions, and added a new skin slot on the cosmetics page. Alright, well, this is just mainly for MTX stuff, right? Nothing too out of the ordinary, but the rest is awesome. So that summarizes 0.2.1 patch that we're hoping to deploy at the end of the next week, but are keeping flexible as it might fall into the week afterwards. Okay, cool. We will keep you updated with further changes and post some specifics on uniques and socketables between now and then. I'm hyped for the uniques, by the way. I'm very, very hyped. So I wanted to kind of wrap up the expedition logbooks. Of course, this area is mainly for, you know, super endgame stuff, but I'll just look at a couple of them and then we'll wrap it up here. So the Frigid Bluffs logbook area is an icy tundra with Val architecture and many Val monsters and Val remnants frozen in time. Aside from the traditional expedition monsters and chests, you can also explode these Val objects free. The problem is these are relatively underwhelming. There are a few monsters, and they are not any more rewarding than normal expedition monsters, and on top of that, the remnants just cause the monsters' drops to be corrupted, which is more arguably a downside than otherwise. Okay, cool. So we're making a couple of changes here. On top of the Val monsters, we're now going to have some Val bosses frozen in time too. Cool. All right. These are standalone map bosses that can be broken out and fought. All the remnant modifiers will apply to them as normal. The Val remnants that cause items to drop corrupted are now being reworked. Okay. Now they will generate with 1 to 3 upsides and 1 to 3 downsides that normal remnants have. Think of them just as a super remnant. All right. I mean, overall, once again, solid changes for endgame and for players who have been, you know, having a tough time in this area. This is good for y'all. But I think the most important changes for me out of all of this are the rogue exiles, the socketables, and the unique items / endgame rewards. Those to me were the major standouts, and I'm really stoked to see what they add in as far as unique items. Let me know what you folks think in the comment section. What are you most excited about? Look forward to more PoE 2 content, more build crafting guides as always, and more ARPG stuff in the future. New warriors, stay strong, keep fighting, and may the force be with you all always. See you again soon. Take care.